client seminar presentation. Our presentation today is given by Gareth from Otis Lifts on the subject of lift maintenance, contracts and repairs. Gareth has worked with Otis over the last 10 years, starting off as area sales consultant, key account manager, service sales manager, and is now the general manager for Otis Ireland. I'm going to pass you over to Gareth for the presentation.
Thanks, John. Welcome. As I said, John introduced me there as Gareth Fanning, General Manager for Otis. Just going to give you a brief overview of the Otis organisation, and then also look at the aspects of the Otis service and new equipment business, which would be pertinent to the O'Dwyer property portfolio and the O'Dwyer clients. Just to give you an idea, Elisha Graves was the original founding member of the elevator in terms of actually applying a safety gear to elevators back in 1853. I'm not going to go through every single milestone, but the important year for the O'Dwyer portfolio would be the year 2000. And this particular product here, which we have, which is called the Gen 2 product. The majority of the lifts that are in O'Dwyer properties are Gen 2 technology. And they were manufactured out of our Gien factory in Paris. We have had some more milestones over the last 10 years to 14 years, and the introduction of the way to green in terms of greener energy and smaller carbon footprint was a substantial one in 2010, and you'll see this as a recurring theme throughout the presentation. Worldwide, who are we? Worldwide, we are approximately 2.4 million lifts and escalators. We're in over 200 countries and territories. And we've over 61,000 employees. And that really means nothing from an Irish perspective. So to try and put it into an Irish perspective, who are some of our iconic buildings in Ireland? So we were very heavily involved in the Shelbourne redevelopment. All of the equipment in Dundrum Town Centre is ours. Travelators, escalators, lifts, front of house, back of house, panoramics, goods, etc. Similarly with the Intercontinental, which was the old Four Seasons Hotel in Ballsbridge, Treasury Building, the Guinness Storehouse, all Otis equipment, including the criminal courts, and then the most recent large major project was Terminal 2, where we fitted 96 units, escalators, lifts, the large panoramic blue lifts in the main terminal building being the feature. Across Europe, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but again, Otis equipment is installed in some very iconic buildings, including the Eiffel Tower. Across the Americas, the Empire State Building, Rio de Janeiro, and we are the sole supplier to the new World Trade Center building on Ground Zero site in New York. Similarly, some of the more iconic buildings in Asia, the Petronas Towers, Burj Khalifa. So some of the largest high-rise buildings in the world have Otis technology. And that keeps us at the cutting edge in terms of research and development and advanced innovation in terms of lift technology. These high-rise buildings don't really have an application in Dublin, but you never know with the Financial Service Centre and the Docklands, they may have some. Who are we in Ireland? We have 1,500 customers plus, over 6,000 lifts maintained, north and south. We have a nationwide service delivery. So in terms of our response times, our key performance indicators in terms of our contracts, it is nationwide. We operate out of 3 offices, Dublin, Belfast and Cork. And we have a host of resident engineers in the more remote locations. So for example, we have resident engineers in Donegal, Galway, Mayo, Westmeath, Waterford, Kerry, Limerick, Tipperary, in order for us to be able to meet our response times and actually go after and invest in the national contracts and bulk contracts that we have from a commercial basis, less residential, more commercial orientated. New equipment slide is probably less prevalent to what you have here, but there's been some new technology that's come out in new equipment that I just wanted to mention that would be applicable to existing sites and existing customers across the O'Dwyer portfolio. We talked about the Gen 2 technology, and what's unique about the Gen 2 technology is these types of innovations. So for example, we don't use wire ropes. We use patented polyurethane coated belts. The advantages of that, well, for the residential customer, is that they're much quieter. Anybody who's got a bedroom built next to a lift shaft with wire roping, the decibel levels would be 10 times what it would be on a polyurethane belt. The ride quality is far superior. We talk about capital investment and the cost of replacing ropes. That could be 3.5 to 5K depending on the number of stops and the way that the lift is actually installed. And that could need to be done every 5 years, 6 years. With polyurethane belt technology, your lift might not need to be rebelted for 20 years. So there are real advantages to the clients in having this technology. And because it's inside the lift shaft, half of them don't even know it's there. They don't know it exists. The machine is a permanent magnetic machine. It's 70% smaller, so it allows for smaller headrooms within shafts. It's safer equipment, less noise and vibration, and there's no lubrication required as well for the belt technology. Looking at regenerative drives, which I'll come on to in more detail later, but you can see that historically in 2000, this is the type of consumption that we were looking at with the Gen 2 with the non-regen drive. We moved on to 2007 to introduce the regen as standard, and that gave us 58% savings. And now we've brought out a new model of regen drive, which is giving us another 10% savings. So you're looking at 68% electricity savings on the running costs of your lift. I'll come on to that in more detail, and we've got a small clip that will help you understand how that works. This is the product which has been brought out since in the last 2 years. It's been developed mostly for the Asian market, but is also in the UK and Ireland. For most lifts, it requires 3-phase power, and that can be 10 grand of an upgrade in an existing building. This new product will basically allow you to fit a lift and plug it into single volt supply. So for existing buildings, it is very user friendly. It doesn't mean that you have to have 3-phase power. In areas where there is difficulty in getting 3-phase power, west of Ireland, for example, southwest of Ireland, it's very, very costly to get 3-phase in. This lift will run by itself on battery backup for up to 100 runs. Doesn't even need power. And again, so it's very innovative, and it was designed specifically for the Asian market where they have huge problems with spikes in power and entrapments, etc. But that is now available for the Irish market. We talked about the way to green. That's just a generic slide that we have in relation to some of the innovations that we've had. And again, some of this I've covered already, and the regen drive I'll come back on to. Modernisation of lifts. We've spoken with John and with Gordon in the past about modernisation. The life cycle of a lift is circa 20 years. You can get 40 years, you can get 30 years, it depends on the technology. But most independent consultants would consider the life cycle of a lift to be 20 years. The majority of the lifts that we have here are in excess of 10 years. So we should be starting to think about sinking funds. We should be starting to think about finance. We should be starting to think about how we modernise, why we modernise, and the rationale for modernising lift equipment. Do we modernise? Do we rip the old one out and put a brand new one in? What are the opportunities and risks in relation to that? So for modernisation, you're taking the best part of the original lift that's there and you're upgrading the parts that are becoming less reliable. There is less disruption to the building, there's less builder's work. The programs are normally about 1/2 to 2/3 of the longevity of a full replacement, and the costs are normally similar, about 2/3. So modernisation, we have 3 different types of lift. We've got the traditional lift where you've got a machine room on the top of the apartment blocks. You'll see these in all of the 1960s, 1970s, the brownstones in town, and you'll wonder what that hut or that little block on top of the building is. That's the machine room for the lift. And that's called a traction lift, and we've developed a modernisation package that takes the new equipment technology, the Gen 2 technology, to adapt this. Get rid of the old machines, the old controllers, keep the existing lift doors, keep the existing lift car, which is very sound engineering, keep the guide rails, so it prevents drilling and fixing, disruption to the building, noise, etc., etc. And that's what we do in terms of a traditional, what we call a Gen 2 mod, or a modernisation on traction lifts. This is basically a full replacement, where we put everything into the shaft. So the majority of the lifts that we have, whether it be in Spencer Dock or Custom House Square, or most of them for Custom House Square, you'd have these type of ones here. With machine rooms, Spencer Dock, you'd have these ones here, which are MRLs, which are called machine roomless lifts. And then you have hydrogen, which is the old technology. You know it's a hydrogen because basically there's a big oil tank, and if there is issues in terms of the lift being under pressure, it smells like you're burning oil. It smells like there's a chipper near the lift. That's old technology and really needs to start being replaced now in full. Why energize? So in terms of why modernise, well, we've said safety, we've said ride quality, we've said other things, but the main reason for it is the running costs. So this is a case study that we have for a 1.6 metre per second lift, 1300 kg more or less capacity, and 1600 kb capacity. This is before modernisation and this is after modernisation. And what we're finding on most test sites where we're putting meters on before and after, you're looking at 80% energy saving, which is very, very, very substantial. Depending on whether the lift is getting most of its utilisation during the day or at night, but in most residential properties it's during the day, so you're on the day premium kilowatt rating. So it depends on what kilowatt pricing you have or what contracts they have with the energy service provider, but up to 80% energy saving. Other reasons: ride quality, improvement in equipment uptime, and significant reduction in the current energy consumption, as we've discussed. So ride quality, it's improved by nearly 2/3. In terms of levelling accuracy, after modernisation, you're looking at levelling accuracy of plus and minus 3 mil. And why is that important? Well, you get less potential compensation claims, less trip hazards, etc. Callbacks, very important. We have what we call rogue units or critical or rebel units. And with the older technology, you could be getting 6 callbacks, you could be getting 10 callbacks, 12 callbacks per annum. And then the perception of the equipment is that it's non-reliable. With the Gen 2 technology, the average callback per annum, due to fair wear and tear, is 1.3. So less than 2 callbacks per annum if it's maintained properly. And then we discussed there as well, in terms of energy consumption, there you can see the savings of around 75 to 80%. So the Gen 2 mod standalone this can be applied to not just Otis equipment. So if you have a machine room above on a lift and you want to modernise, come to us. This technology is patented. So we take all of our new equipment technology and apply it to the old engineering. So the guides stay in place, the landing doors stay in place, the car doors stay in place. And we put in a new controller, new magnetic machine, you put in new travelling flexes, and then new car operating panel inside the car, and push buttons and hold position indicators. And the lift is, from a ride point of view and from an energy consumption point of view, as good as new. But all of that really is only seen inside the shaft. So we do recommend that if you are going down this route, that we look at upgrading the car as well, so that the clients actually see something for their investment. Again, hydraulic, I won't repeat myself, but the same sort of technology can be applied to hydraulic. That's an example of post-modernisation. Doesn't look like much, but that's the controller. That little barrel there, grey barrel, is the machine. This is the pulse monitor that sends the electrical pulses down the belts to make sure that they're sound. And that's the bed plate. So the lift is hanging directly below the slab. And we have examples all over Dublin. It's one of the most successful products that we've had in terms of post-modernisation. We've done it on, as I said, non-Otis equipment and Otis equipment. And if ever any clients want to go and see or reference our testimonial site, we have sites all over Dublin city centre. Maintenance. I'm going to go on to this particular slide in terms of maintenance because John and the property managers have asked us to look at this. This is a very contentious area for service provision. You can see here that we have on the, beg your pardon, on the Otis contracts, we have 4 different types of contracts. And we don't call them basic, or we don't call them semi-comp, or we don't call them comprehensive, or we don't call them bronze, silver, or gold. But what we do is we outline what is involved in terms of scope of work for each individual element of the service provision. Excuse me, and what's included and what is not included. What we have found when comparing contracts across the industry is that there are large gaps and areas of contention in terms of what constitutes a comprehensive contract. In our opinion, a comprehensive contract is fully comprehensive. So it would include your basic call-outs during normal working hours. It would include call-outs outside of normal working hours. It would include minor consumables. It would include major components. And within the major components area, I would include machines, I would include controllers, I would include full belt replacement, full rope replacement, drives, boards are all fully inclusive. What we have done in order to be able to compete on the playing field across the market is introduce a solution contract. So when you're looking at service provision and maintenance contracts, it's really about risk. How much risk do you want us to take on, and how much risk do you want the client to take on? How old is the equipment? How often is it being used? Is there a large amount of entrapments? Is there a large amount of misuse and abuse? It's about almost like taking out an insurance policy. So what we've committed to do over the course of the last year and 2 years is to be able to compare like with like. Is what we would prefer to do now is build up what key performance indicators and what scope your clients want, and then design a contract around your client and what they want, what's important to them. Historically, we have had mostly signature contracts, which we would deem to be fully comprehensive. Just to put that into perspective, if other service providers are not including fully major components and it's not fully comprehensive, the annual billing value of that particular contract would be, I don't know, whatever it might be, but to replace a machine, you could be looking at 10 to 15 grand. A major board, 5,000 euros. Rope replacement, 5,000 euros. So one needs to be very, very careful as to what's included and what's not included, and what is in the scope and what is not in the scope. And that's all I'll say on it. But if you have any queries or questions on it, we're happy to answer them. And what I would say is my preference would be that we go and find out what your customer actually wants. They might not want a fully comprehensive contract. The lift might be 2 years old. They might say, well, for the next 5 years, I'll manage the risk. I just want maintenance provision and call-outs during normal working hours. And we'll price accordingly, and it'll be competitive. Repairs, similarly, need to be sure as to what's included in the repair, and also whether the equipment is generic, whether it's patented, and cost effective. So obviously if you're looking at are basic in nature or semi-comprehensive in nature, these are the type of major repairs that you will have: controllers, door operators, etc. This is just a small section on portfolio upgrades. So the type of things that we should be looking at across the lift in order to save clients money: door operator standbys, signalisation standbys, LED lighting to replace the existing lighting in terms of actual kilowatt rating, motion sensors, so the lights in the lift shut down when they aren't being used. There's loads of green packages and packages out there that are beneficial to the client that will pay for themselves in less than 12 months. And it's something that we can differentiate between ourselves and O'Dwyer's, going to the clients and saying, well, this is for this investment, it'll pay for itself in 12 months, and then you'll have that value for the years thereafter. Regen drives, how it works. I'm going to play you a clip on this because it also gives you, it's only a 3-minute, 4-minute clip with an American accent, unfortunately, but it is what it is. But it just gives you an idea of how lifts actually work, because you know guys don't see what's in the shafts, so it's something that might be of benefit to you, and just gives you an idea of how this regen will work, and in terms of your clients, what sort of energy savings they can actually expect from it.
Otis proudly introduces a new energy-efficient technology that can deliver savings of up to 75% compared to conventional elevator systems. Regen drives meet the demands of green building initiatives by providing a powerful solution that significantly reduces energy demand and lowers overall building energy costs. A conventional elevator system consists of a car, a machine, and a counterweight. The counterweight is designed to balance the weight of a half-loaded car. As a result, the counterweight is heavier than an empty or lightly loaded car, but lighter than a heavily or fully loaded one. This difference enables the elevator to utilize gravity to travel up with a light load or descend with a heavy load. When the car utilizes gravity, the machine creates electricity, just like a generator. In conventional systems, the electricity generated by the machine is wasted. It is fed back through the elevator electrical system and dissipated as heat through resistors, creating waste heat loads in the building. Regen drives conserve this energy and put it to work. Combined with highly efficient gearless machines, Regen drives feed this energy back into the building's electrical grid, where it can be used to power other building systems. The Regen drive's reduced energy consumption makes it the smart choice for green building initiatives. By reducing energy consumption during periods of peak load, Regen drives provide substantial energy savings. Regen drives also produce clean power, which dramatically reduces the harmonic distortion of the incoming line current, resulting in less pollution of the building's electrical power system, helping to protect sensitive building equipment. The Regen drive's robust design can withstand significant voltage fluctuations and can operate with all standard voltages from 170 volts to 528 volts, making them an ideal choice for a broad range of applications. Regen drives, another example of how Otis is leading the way to a greener, more energy-efficient future.
So that just gives you an idea of the type of savings that can be applied. All of this is all very well because it's in the machine room or it's in the shaft, but most of our clients and our residents only see one part of the lift, and that's the car. So, you know, we can invest 40 or 50 grand on a brand new lift and lift control system, but really every now and then upgrades and lift aesthetics, it is important to look at that from both just from an aesthetic point of view, but also from a safety point of view. So something small like having a half-height rear mirror in the lift car is important, because as you enter into the lift, you can see somebody coming in behind you. That's why they're called for under DDA. Similarly, the flooring, if it's solid black and somebody is visually impaired, they're less likely to get into the lift because they feel that there might be a void. So maybe we should have patterned floorings, etc. Handrails for people with wheelchairs to wheel themselves in and out of lifts if they don't have them. So it's not just about the aesthetics, it's also about DDA compliance, voice enunciation, etc., etc. So it's something else to think about. We have specialised vendors and a modernisation factory based in Breslav in the Czech Republic that specialises in this type of thing, whether it be the aesthetics or the DDA compliant materials. But it's something else to consider when you're thinking about the lifts and lift cars, and also the value of properties. If you're doing up lobbies and you're doing up shared service areas, and the rest of the investment is the rest of the property is being invested in, the lift car is important. Remote elevator monitoring is a fancy word for what we call autodialers, except ours is much more than an autodialer. It allows us to interrogate the lifts. So, for example, I gave one of your previous colleagues an example down the road, and the lifts down in Grand Central. We can take control of the lifts remotely. So we can have an elite engineer on a laptop taking control of the lift, releasing passengers remotely, doing remote diagnostics, bypassing floors. The technology is endless. So basically the remote elevator monitor allows us to control the autodialer, control the two-way communication, control the testing of the phone line, but also allows us to actually bring in flexible functionality, which I'm going to come on to here. So the likes of restricted floor access, modifying door times, energy saves, remove the group from operation, suspend a lift from service if you're doing a fit out, anti-nuisance, other bits and pieces. If you've got a VIP coming into the building and he wants to go from the ground floor to the penthouse, you can bypass all the floors. You can dedicate the lift to him or her, etc., etc. So that's what the REM technology has, and again, that's patented technology. And that allows us to do this elite service, which I'll come back onto very quickly. Only a couple more minutes left. Versatility, this is the GSM product that we've talked about. We've been talking to John quite extensively about, which is going to be replacing some of the analog lines. It's cost effective, it's a turnkey solution. So whereby we have dedicated analog lines with most of the lifts, we can maybe slave some lines in, reduce the cost of line rental, put a GSM product in with a chip, and offer a turnkey solution. And again, that pays for itself in, John, what, a year and a half? Yeah. 2 years?
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah.
18 months to 2 years. The elite service is a priority service that we have, and again, it just goes back to the remote elevator monitoring technology, and more details can be found on the presentation. And that's the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. There's sales collateral and support material on the intranet. It's www.otis.com. And if you go onto the Irish website, you can find a whole host of sales collateral from a new equipment point of view and a service point of view. And we're only based around the corner now because we're living in Sandy, but we've moved from the nice road. So, any questions? Okay, thank you very much.